Hello! Today I'm going to be taking a look at these two little watercolour sets by the company Mont Marte. It's an Australian company and these tins are really cute. I've had these for a while. I've been really curious to try them out, so we're going to find out today if they're any good. Let's get into it! There were a few different sets to choose from, I think. I decided to just choose the standard watercolour set. Apparently these are premium paints, and this is the metallic one, so I thought this would be interesting to see if it's any good as well. Let's open them up and see what they look like inside. I really do love these little tins. I think they're gorgeous. And it's got quite a nice little thumb ring on the back of it. It's really solid, actually. The box is pretty light. I don't know that the pans are going to be very large. Here's a small preview of the colours. And it's got 18 pans, 1 palette, and 1 sponge, and a medium water brush. Alright, let's open it up and see what it looks like. So they are quite tiny in here. There is indeed a little sponge. There's a few little mixing wells. This feels pretty flimsy, the plastic inside. So that's what the tin looks like. It's kind of annoying that this middle bit's here because otherwise this would be really awesome for putting in half pans. But maybe you could put half pans around it or something. Hey, this comes out. Oh, that's quite cute. That is pretty flimsy plastic too. I don't know how long that's going to hold up. There's a plastic thing here with all of the colours on there. At least it's got the names. It also has the pigment numbers on it, surprisingly, and whether they are transparent or opaque. That one there is opaque, and then the empty circle like that would be transparent. I'm guessing these are light fast ratings. There is a tiny little water brush. They always open the opposite way to what I think. That is a pretty tiny reservoir. I've got some water here. I might as well just use this to fill it up with. And I'm just squeezing it a bit to get the water down. There we go. It's coming out of the brush, so it does work. I'll just open the other tin and we'll see what those look like as well. So I think it's got the same layout with the 18 pans and a sponge, water brush and palette. Yeah, it looks pretty much the same. They do look pretty shiny, if you could see that kind of metallic finish to them. I'm intrigued. Metallic paints can be very hit and miss as to whether they're actually metallic, and this brush works too. Okay, there's one thing I've noticed, is that these tins do not lie flat. When it comes to the lids, they kind of sit on an angle, which is kind of annoying. So I think I'm actually just going to make up some swatch cards and stick them in here. I've got some small watercolour paper here. I'll start out with the regular colours. The Chinese white faded into the black, so it's about as useful as a chocolate teapot. But happily, a lot of the colours in the set were quite good. There are 3 yellows, which is probably one too many, but actually all of them are quite nice. It took a little while to get them activated, but I found once I'd taken off the top layer of the pans or the skin of the paint, they worked a lot better, and they re-wet more easily. Most of the colours are pretty vibrant and they have a decent pigment load. There are a couple at the end which are not so great. I'll show you those eventually. And speaking of pigments, I completely forgot to look at the pigment numbers and write them down, so I'm doing well today. From what I remember, they're all pretty standard pigments, nothing out of the ordinary. I really like this purple. This is probably my favourite in the set. It's a nice dioxazine, and is probably the most vibrant of all of them. The ultramarine's not too bad either. It looks more like a phthalo blue here, but in person it is actually an ultramarine colour. Cerulean blue is okay, but this was one that looked a bit chalky, and I think that was due to the white mixed in with it. It looks alright here, but just when it dries it goes a bit yucky compared to the other ones. I mean, these are pretty cheap sets, so I'm not expecting miracles out of them. I bought these at a store in Australia called Artshed, and they cost around 22 Australian dollars per tin, if I remember correctly. I'll link them in the description below. I also found them on Amazon US, so I'll be linking them there. And I think the metallic set was around 12 or 13 US dollars. I can't remember exactly what this particular set was. It's under 20 though. So if we take that price into consideration, this isn't a bad set at all. Although it does have some limitations. Obviously, I think the Chinese white is pretty useless, but also the Payne's grey is incredibly disappointing. It's just this blur kind of colour. I don't like it at all. And the lamp black wasn't much better. They go on fairly dark, but then they dry a lot lighter, and we'll see this a bit later in my paintings. I'd give the grey and the black maybe a 4 out of 10 each. And the rest maybe a 6 or 7. The metallics, as per usual with metallic paints, they just do not activate straight away, so the best thing is to drip a bit of water on them. I tend to do this rather than spraying water because that just makes so much more mess, but letting the water sit there for a while really does make a difference, and they will actually start to work. Now, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, I really don't like the metallic watercolour set very much. To me, they feel a lot more pearlescent than metallic, and you can see when I've put them on the black parts, it just goes this kind of milky, nondescript colour. None of them really showed up very colourfully on the black. On the white part of the paper, you can really see the colours showing through. But over the black, they're just kind of a pearlescent glaze and maybe not so useful. I would use these over the top of their matching colours rather than going onto black or straight onto white paper where they actually show up. But I have used some metallics which look absolutely amazing on black. This set, not so much. To be fair, I did not actually do a painting on black with these, mainly because I was feeling uninspired by them, and so I decided to focus my efforts on white paper or painting them over other colours. Some of the colours are actually really pretty on the white. I do like that turquoise blue there. And in case you're wondering, the M is just standing for metallics because I was too lazy to write it out 18 times. Honestly, the only one I think is metallic in this set is the gold. Everything else just feels like a pearlescent to me. Once I finish swatching, I'll show you how they shimmer in the light. I think overall I'd give this set maybe a 5 out of 10, right in the middle. It's okay, but I just really am not that enthused with it. I think there are other sets out there which are better. I might need to do a comparison video of some of the different metallic sets I have just so that we can actually see the difference. Or if I'm just remembering wrong and maybe they aren't that different from each other. That would be a good experiment to do. But here they all are once they're dried. And maybe you can see how they all kind of look the same on the black, except for that gold which does stand out. The gold seems to be quite a lot more opaque than the others, so it really shimmers. Whereas pretty much all of the other colours I think are too transparent, and so when they're on the black they just really don't show up their colour. It's just more of a milky sheen, which isn't that great. But at least they do have a sheen, so that's something in their favour. That phthalo green is also standing out to me. Let's get into some paintings with these two palettes. First up, I'm going to draw some macarons and raspberries. It was just a little picture I saw on Pixabay and I thought that the colours might work well for these two palettes, incorporating some of the metallics into it. I'm also using that Be Creative watercolour paper. It's not very good, unfortunately, even though it's 100% cotton paper. I used it to paint the angry duckling in my Michael Harding watercolour review as well. But let's get back to this one. I'm painting metallics straight onto the paper for the macarons. I just wanted to see how they would work on their own. And they do go a really pretty pastel colour. Now I'm using some of the regular paints to go over the top of the raspberries, painting in a fairly quick layer, and then I will go over everything again with more colours, just to build up the saturation and hopefully a bit of texture. So I'm doing a second layer of the metallics onto the macaron. You can see it does build up quite nicely. And every so often there's a bit of a sheen. So this worked out pretty well for these. And I would consider these a shinier version of pastel watercolours. So if pastels are something that you like to paint with, then these are actually pretty good. They complement quite well with the regular watercolours because those are a lot more heavily saturated. And it's quite nice to have a contrast between the regular watercolours and the more metallic, lighter pastel colours. The greens in this set are pretty good too. This is the regular watercolours, and yes, they merged into my raspberries a little bit there. The issues with the paper started with the background here. I'm using the Prussian blue, and you can see how the paper is just misbehaving when I add too much water to the paint and then paint it on. So it just goes a lot like what I expect cellulose paper to behave. Oh gosh, around here it's just terrible. And this is the worst I've ever seen a cotton paper behave. So I definitely do not recommend the paper. Stay well clear of that. I don't even remember where I bought it from. I just know it was pretty cheap and that's why I decided to try it. But yeah, cheap and nasty, unfortunately. Even a second layer didn't really do much to help it. The top part of the painting I painted in with some of the metallic green. It has completely faded into the background and has made this painting a bit too shiny. I really should have just used the metallics on the two macarons, but I was just trying to use as many of them as possible in the painting. So I'm not exactly keen on the background of this. In fact, this whole painting is a bit of a disaster, really. I persevered for as long as I could, but I really wasn't very happy with this. Had I not been filming a video, I probably would have left this one unfinished because I just really did not like the paper. But I just went over everything with a white pen because that usually fixes things up, and here we have a finished painting with the background totally bleached out by the scanner. Yay! I'm going to do a second painting on better paper. In fact, this is my best paper, Canson Moulin du Roi, so I know that the paper cannot be affected with them. I saw a picture of a dog, I think it was also on Pixabay, and in my infinite wisdom I decided to paint it in rainbow colours, which was really challenging because I couldn't use the reference photo to put the colours in the right place. I just had to guess. But because most of the colours in the original palette are rainbow, I just figured this would be a good way to showcase them. I get these ideas into my head sometimes, and sometimes they work out, other times maybe not so much. I didn't think the dog was going to work out at all at this point because it's going through a really ugly phase at the moment. What a blobby mess. But actually I ended up really liking how this painting turned out overall. I just needed to paint on layers and be patient, which is not always my forte, or never would be more an accurate description there. The eyes went a bit messy with the black, and the nose, it just would not get dark for some reason, even though I painted on many layers. So I did use a bit of pen just to go over the eyes and make things look a bit more neat. The nose was a total mess, so I had to paint over that quite a few times. But these watercolours actually worked out pretty well when I started painting in the second layer. At the moment, I'm just using the regular set of paints, not the metallics at all. And the purple was definitely the standout colour for me because it's nice and dark, but it's just also really rich and vibrant. Other colours in the palette were nice too, especially any that were transparent, which I think is most of them. Really, the biggest disappointments were the Payne's Grey and the black, and I just didn't even bother using the white because that one is always hopeless. I really don't know why companies have to add white into watercolour sets, because they almost always pick ones that are translucent and so they're hopeless because you need an opaque white or it's just not going to work at all. Let me know in the comments if you use the white out of watercolour sets because I don't know many people who do. No judgment, I'm just genuinely curious. Oh, this background, I did a wet on wet technique, dripping in different metallics. I absolutely hate it, so let's not talk about that. In the end, I actually cropped the picture because the background just does not work with the brightness of the dog, and I decided there was not enough definition on the dog, so I'm going over it with some sketchy fine liner pen lines, and I think this really brought the whole picture together. It just makes it look a lot more cartoonish, which works well for this, and I've got a bit of white pen to add in a few details. Here's the cropped image at the end. Alright, I am calling it done today. Here are the two paintings that I managed to do, and here on this one you can see the metallics are actually showing up relatively well on these two macarons and also not too bad in the background. This dark blue seemed to work out okay, although the paper's made it go a little bit funny here. And then onto this one. Oh dear, I don't mind the dog, I really hate the background. I am going to actually cut this up here and just take off that part of it, but I thought I'd leave it on so you can see the metallics just on that background. The gold's standing out I think the most. I didn't put any on the dog itself, I just decided to leave well enough alone. The layers of colours are actually pretty decent. They're nice and vibrant and there's not too much chalkiness. There's a tiny bit in this light cerulean blue because I think the white's causing that, but the other colours which are translucent are decent. Except for that black, I have painted on about 4 layers and it just still will not stay dark enough. It's so frustrating. I really love the tins. I think those are super pretty and they are an attractive packaging. I don't mind the little water brush, although I didn't use it for my large paintings, but it's a handy little size for going out, and I like that it's quite short because that fits into palettes, whereas some of the longer brushes don't. As you can see, I didn't use a sponge. I tend not to use them. I don't find them particularly useful, so yeah, I'll just ignore that. These paints were okay. I think my favourite out of this set is the purple, and the ultramarine's okay too. The scarlet's not bad either, and these yellows are quite bright. The Payne's grey and the black are pretty crap though, and I didn't like those ones very much. In the metallics, personally, I'm really not that keen on them. I mean, they're okay. I have just used better metallics in the past. If I was to pick a set of any of them, I think the general premium watercolour set is pretty decent by Mont Marte. I don't think I would probably go out of my way to get these, especially not the metallics. But I hope this video was helpful and gave you an idea as to whether these are worth getting or not. I'm sure you will know for yourself whether you would even consider them. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up because that always helps out. You might also like to click the subscribe button for more videos in the future, and in the meantime you might want to check out these two videos here which are in my collection. So I hope you're having a great day out there, and I'll see you all again really soon in my next video. Swatch you later, bye!